Hello YouTube, it's Tony. So today I'll do a video on what's going on with RuneScape 3 and how I think it can improve. For the last 2 months, RuneScape 3's population has hit its all-time low, averaging only 16k to 19k users online. Now I'm not saying this game is dying, but it's certainly not as popular compared to the past. I truly believe this game has a lot of potential to improve. Here are the 3 reasons contributing to this problem. Number 1, MTX. It has been pushed to its hardest, especially in the last 3 months. We're getting more and more overpowered promotions, as well as gambling lawsuits against Jagex. Also, the updates recently have been very lackluster. More and more people are getting fed up with updates being either cancelled or delayed. And thirdly, some of these J-mods are leaving. The most notable examples include Mod Lee, Mod Meadows, Mod Wolf, Mod Dolan, and most recently the great Mod Shawnee has decided to leave. See, even the best developers just don't want to stay here. Instead of complaining, let's give 10 realistic suggestions on how RuneScape 3 can improve. Now, I'm not a game developer myself, so my information might not be very accurate. Alright, so I'm going to start with the biggest elephant in the room, and that is reworking MTX. Jagex will never remove MTX because it's their main source of profit, even if we have this few RS3 players. Unless RS3 becomes big like OSRS, this game cannot profit better without Treasure Hunter itself. As a matter of fact, MTX accounts for 33% of the yearly revenue in 2018. So what is the biggest problem with MTX? Well, that is the ability to instantly get levels without playing content, or the ability to gamble for rewards that would have gotten you ahead of this game. The following MTX should be removed. Number 1, XP lamps. The problem with rubbing lamps is that they let you instantly skip content, and oftentimes people spend big money on this. That means that there's essentially no need to make skilling content itself, because then you don't need to train the skill. The second thing that needs to be removed are coin stacks. Now people who aren't experienced at RuneScape will probably gamble their way thinking that, oh, if I buy Treasure Hunter keys, maybe there's this small chance that I might get some in-game cash. But in actual fact, the chance is rare, and you're better off selling bonds for in-game cash instead of this. I mean, it also reduces overinflation of the economy if you were to remove the coin stacks. And the third thing that needs to be removed are higher tier lucky equipment. Not only does this devalue boss drops, but it also makes it so that players might want to gamble just to get these good armor and weapons. I'm talking to you, Shadow Virtus. As for everything else, well, I think you can just keep it as is. I mean, for bonus XP it's okay because you still have to play the game even if it allows you to train the skill twice as fast. For bank boosters and other things in the Solomon store, they're mostly quality of life and they're not really game breaking. Cosmetics are okay because they won't affect your gameplay. Something that people have really suggested would be to add more retro versions of certain equipment like Gilded Set, since it would look more nostalgic. It's not going to cost many resources to make this, and I'm sure a lot of people would like the retro sets. I know there are replica sets in this game, but there are still old sets that people really want to get their hands on. Overall, there's a lot of opinions on MTX, and some want it removed entirely, but what I propose is a pretty realistic suggestion if they want to profit without overly upsetting the current player base. At number 2, frequency of updates. This would benefit the health of this game. Seriously, give us something to look forward to, as the majority of the RuneScape players have finished most of the content available. I'm not saying that every single week there needs to be new content, but at least maybe once every month or so, just give us something to be hyped about. This ties into my next point, consistency over big updates. A lot of times when they make big updates, they'll go through several months without releasing any new content. What I suggest instead is do smaller updates but with increased frequency, just to give us something to look forward to. Also, sometimes when new content is released, we only see fixes for the first 2 weeks, instead of another development team actively working for fixes. Look at Stone Spirits for example from the Mining and Smithing rework. It took 10 months to release some proposal on this. The other thing I'd like to talk about are quests. If we release quests more often, this will get players excited. I get that some people don't like quests, but RuneScape 3 has thrived so well on having a good storyline. It may be hard to release new quests because, you gotta write a story, but at least try to finish the current storyline so it will keep us playing. And the last part of this suggestion is stop giving developers unrealistic deadlines for updates. If a developer thinks they can finish content by like late February or something, then don't tell them it will be out by February. Instead, what I suggest is that they release the update in mid-March, so that way it will give extra time to test it. A lot of times when it comes to rush updates, they cause a lot of outrage because of disappointment, and it could lead to game-breaking oversights, or possibly the update entirely being cancelled. The third suggestion I'll talk about is player feedback. Seriously, listen to player feedback and suggestions more often. One of the perfect examples with this would be bringing back polls for certain pieces of content. Also, stop nerfing content without asking for a feedback. I'm not sure about the communication as of late, but I think it's gotten better with Game Jam, although I truly believe it can improve even further than that. Remember TAP, which stands for Thursday All-Day Personal Projects? Yeah, we gotta bring this back here. This means that developers would spend their time coming with new fixes or player-suggested updates which are not according to their development schedule. Having TAP meant better player communication. Look on this list of how many nice updates we got thanks to TAP. Unfortunately, since the start of 2019, it has been cancelled. And finally, just because something's hard to fix, it shouldn't be an excuse to try not to fix them actively. I mean, there are so many RuneScape 3 developers in this game. Now, I understand that this is an 18-year-old game and it's gonna have a lot of spaghetti code, but I don't think you need several months to fix something. Maybe also try cleaning up their old code once in a while, so that way it'll be easier to fix in the future. The fourth suggestion I'll talk about is the developer working environment. Of course, I don't work for Jagex, so I'm just gonna assume everything here. Give the JMods a reasonable schedule to work with, instead of having, 1 or 2 JMods do all the work. This can be fixed with better management and leadership. Also, give the more helpful and more passionate JMods a salary raise. Seriously, stop firing or better yet causing valuable JMods to leave. These developers need to be given a better incentive to work here. I understand that yeah, it's overall easier said than done, but they should intrinsically be rewarded more for their contributions. Suggestion number 5, improve the customer support. Many people have to rely on Twitter to appeal bans or just about anything really. The problem is that Jagex support doesn't allow private messaging. Look, Twitter should never be a mainstream support system because it lacks hiding information, which means anyone can see this. Also, you'll notice that the replies tend to be in a copy-paste format instead. Now, I know they're community helper volunteers, so I personally don't blame them for this. Given that they have a lot of money to spend, I realistically think they can hire a better customer support team. At number 6, events and dailies. Reduce the frequency and impact of events. The problem is that certain events are just too rewarding to pass up on. Don't use events as a reason for players to feel obligated to return or log in, or else, they'd miss out on a lot of things. I'm talking about Summer Skill Off, or having 3 double XP weekends in a year. As for holiday events, make them short and reasonable like how OSRS does them. Events are meant to be fun and not supposed to be the main source of XP. Remember back in the day when people did events because it was so cool? Yeah, well, those days are over. Speaking of dailies, there are way too many dailies in RuneScape that are worthwhile. I know this is a pretty hard suggestion to process because the design of dailies was that they're meant to be rewarding, but not conventional training method. However, they've become an obligation for players to log in just so they can do their dailies. Not to mention that sometimes you have to be on at a specific time because some dailies do not always spawn anytime you want. It starts becoming a chore instead of a fun activity. As there are so many dailies out there, it can be very time consuming. Maybe they can remove some of these daily D&Ds and rebalance them to actual repeatable content in the game? I don't know, but this is going to be a bit hard to come up with a realistic solution, especially since efficient players would have preferred doing dailies instead. Number 7, new player experience. The problem is that RuneScape 3 tends to lack at getting new players for many reasons. Number 1, the game is just very complicated, so possibly having a better tutorial for explaining this would be pretty helpful. I mean, we do have a tutorial in this game, don't get me wrong, but it's still too difficult to understand if you're completely brand new. I've seen some players complain to my guide saying that, oh, I don't understand, I don't know where to start, no matter how clearly I explain them. It just shows you how complicated this game is if you want to pick up on new things in RuneScape. The biggest culprit to new player experience is the combat system. Now, it can be very tough for new or returning players just to pick up on their ability rotations. It would be nice if we had a better tutorial on EOC, maybe perhaps making it mandatory for new players. Well, obviously with a checkbox to skip the tutorial if you want. Also, when you try to set up your action bar automatically, you'll notice that this rotation isn't the best revolution DPS available. That's why some people have rack or slice on their first slot, thinking that yeah, it is the best ability here. Interfaces are pretty complicated. The problem with interfaces is that there are far too many settings for this. Even for me who's experienced with this game, I still have to Google up certain settings. So try to make this interface more user-friendly, but at the same time, I think it's going to be hard to come up with a proper category for each type of setting. The other issue with new players is that they're very overwhelmed by the direction of what to do in this game. At first, when you start this game, there is no right way to play this game. In fact, there are so many different ways to play this game. Because of how much content there is, there's just so much exploration for new players to do. Also, please allow us an option to turn off the path system because when I saw a new player typing on my stream, they found this path system annoying. And finally, when it comes to the tick system, yeah, it can feel laggy to new players. They did reveal on RuneFest that they're planning to rework the tick system, although it may be a while before that happens. Suggestion number 8, rework the loyalty program. The biggest issue with loyalty points is that the only way to get a certain aura is to have to wait several months. Make it so that loyalty points can be obtained by playing this game, such as doing quests, achievements, or just about anything that would award you rune score. Make it so that when you buy multiple months of regular membership, it will award the loyalty points up front instead of having to wait every 30 days. I know what you might be thinking, well Tony, auras aren't helpful for new accounts because they're not going to do bossing. You are indeed right that the Berserk aura would not help new players, but then there are auras like Vampirism or Jack of Trades and they have an immediate impact. I mean, there are some people that would prefer auras to be removed from the game, but then again there are so many bosses that are balanced around auras, and not to mention that bossing auras aren't the only auras in this game, so it is going to be even tougher to rebalance content once the auras are gone. While reworking the system would be nice, but I don't think it's going to happen, just because they released this premiere package which awards you 150k bonus loyalty points. Hopefully with the release of Archaeology it might solve this problem. Suggestion number 9, more dynamic strategies instead of repetitiveness. I know it's contradictory to my point about new player complexity, but try to make skilling more enjoyable in general. Most of this population doesn't like skilling, okay? Skilling can feel like a grind sometimes. The problem with skilling is that it's usually very repetitive. For example, Fish Frenzy was meant to be a high effort, high reward type of activity, but unfortunately it's very repetitive and it's not worth it for the effort. Thanks to Junesong, he made a mini suggestion on this. So similar to Fish Flingers, make it so that Anachronia has the best fishing XP in the game, but every few minutes there's a certain combination on tackle, bait, and location, and if you're following it correctly you'll get the best XP rates, or the player can otherwise AFK for lower XP rates. With that being said, rework certain skills like construction, fishing, woodcutting, or even divination. And finally, at number 10, marketing. When it comes to marketing, RuneScape 3 tends to lack at this because of all the negative comments that were made on Reddit and other social media platforms. Even when Jagex tries to address these issues and fewer players complain, I still don't think this game is going to be marketed very well. I mean, it doesn't help that these complaints exist, but removing these complaints isn't going to grow this game heavily. The other issue is that MMORPGs aren't the mainstream compared to open world games like Fortnite or something like that. I don't know, but perhaps when this game improves to attract new players, then marketing this game will be easier and better. These are my 10 suggestions for how RuneScape 3 can improve. Got any more suggestions? Then yeah, feel free to comment down below on this. For those of you who have quit RuneScape 3, what made you quit and what do you think will bring you back to RuneScape 3?